I know this rose will open because we've already opened it right here, right now. This is the power we have as a congregation and beyond. Events unfolding around us, threats to our democracy, crisis in our environment, unrest in the Middle East, death of people we love, still here and now, the rose is open. There is hope. Even though the pace of change all around can leave us breathless, we are breathing. I was crying so much this past week, and I didn't know why. I don't mean tears like just welling up in my eyes, because that can happen to me just watching a commercial or, hearing a song. I mean that ugly cry, what people call that ugly cry, And I was weeping publicly and privately. Now, you may know what kind of week I've had, and so you might be thinking, dude, I know why you were crying. But it finally occurred to me on Friday afternoon that I'd never lost a friend before. Now, most people know that I lost a daughter back in 2006. And since surviving that unconsolable loss, I thought, I'm pretty well acquainted with grief. I've officiated over 400 memorial services in this church. In some cases, I was at the bedside holding the person's hand, praying with the loved ones or singing with them as their mother or their father or their husband or wife was dying. I sort of fashioned myself as an expert in grief and in loss. But this week I discovered that losing a friend is a different kind of grief. And it's new to me. By Friday afternoon, I couldn't talk about Bishop Carlton Pearson, or who I know as Carlton, without crying. 17 years ago, he came to my house the night that our daughter Sienna died. You never forget it when someone shows up at a time like that. Who would want to go over and try to comfort someone who had just unexpectedly lost their 3-year-old child? To sit with someone in their misery, to climb with them down into that dark, dank, dirty hell, and sit with them on the worst night of their life. To go, even though you know that nothing you can say will console them. I don't even remember what he said. I sort of remember thinking that his words were not that helpful. But it was him making that trip late at night without a phone call from me. He just showed up and sat on the floor with me and my wife, Anitra, in our living room as we wept and we held each other. I didn't even know him that well then. That was 2 years before he came to All Souls. We had really just started connecting, but he heard about it and he came. And I certainly didn't know, and I couldn't know then, if the rose of my tender heart would ever open again. Or I couldn't know if my fears would ever burn away. Or if my soul could ever unfurl its wings once more. But now I know the rose will open. My fears will burn away. And right now, it has. I can talk about it without breaking into tears. Right here. Because of what we do, come together, sing and laugh and teach our children and light candles. My heart is open. No fear. I feel your love. On Sunday morning, in this sanctuary, there's always room for me to unfurl the wings of my soul. Do you feel that? When one of the most heralded and beloved Christian leaders in America and around the world, Bishop Carlton Demetrius Pearson, felt a movement in his spirit telling him that God's love is bigger than he had been preaching and bigger than the church had been teaching. He was quickly denounced as a heretic and was excommunicated. When his friends turned their backs on him, when ministers who he ordained and whose careers he launched and supported turned their backs on him, when hundreds of members of his congregation who he had taught and married and christened their babies and came to see them in the hospital and helped bury their dead turned their backs on him, All Souls opened our arms to him and opened our hearts to him and opened the doors of this church to him and to the people who supported and stayed with him. Hope is right here because of what we do. When a minister is ordained, you may know this, we receive what we call the right hand of fellowship. Well, Bishop used to joke that when he had his shift in consciousness, he got the middle finger of fellowship from people. Or sometimes he called it the left foot of fellowship that booted out the door. And it hurt. We've seen him weeping in this pulpit talking about it. Some forgot to tell a lot of his Christian brethren and his siblings that Jesus didn't say, turn your back. Jesus said, turn the other cheek. But Carlton explained that when you believe in an angry God and you worship an angry God and you're committed to an angry God, then anger is part of your faith. And you're going to be angry. And if you think God has an anger management problem and sends earthquakes and tsunamis and diseases to punish people and has a celestial torture chamber waiting for you if you mess up or you don't believe the right way, then you're going to fear God. You might also love God, but you're not going to fully love God because you also fear God. And he would say, but I get it. I was there too for most of my life, fearing God and loving God. But he finally pushed past the fear. He moved on because he finally one day stopped and he listened. And he went beneath the fear. And beneath the fear was sadness about a God that would punish people eternally. A God that would punish most people because most people in the world are not Christians. And when he let himself feel the sadness, he discovered underneath that compassion. And in that compassion, he felt the love of God. You know, about once a year, some parents come to me because they bring their child to see me because the child's having nightmares. A cousin or a neighbor or some other kid at school on the playground told her that she and her parents are going to hell. Now she was having nightmares because they're going to hell because they don't believe in God or because her parents are gay. And they asked me to talk to their child. And with all the religious authority I can muster, I tell them, no, there is no hell. I know a lot of people talk about it, but I can tell you, I've done the research. And I can explain it better to you when you get older and you can understand it and know it for yourself. But you're going to have to trust me. You're safe. Your parents are safe. There is no angry God. And the nightmares usually stop. Hope is here. Right here. Fears are burnt away. Now, you cannot really have nightmares if you don't sleep. And I haven't pulled an all-nighter in a long time, but I almost did this Wednesday night working on the eulogy for Carlton. As one of the visiting bishops who was here, we had I don't know if you were here, but we had all kinds of bishops and all kinds of beautiful gowns and vestments and jewelry and hats, and it was something else. But as one of the bishops said to me afterward, that was the eulogy of a lifetime. And I'm glad I wasn't thinking of that while I was trying to write it or deliver it. But I was looking online yesterday, and I think there have been over 1 million views of that service on the various platforms. And I realized that it was the eulogy of a lifetime. I cannot imagine anything else that I'm ever going to say that will be heard by 1 million people. And after he said that, I had a moment, and I thought, did I use my one shot to speak to 1 million people? Did I use it well? Thank you. Thank you. But in hindsight, I keep thinking of something I could have said or I should have said. But in the end, I realized that if this is my one shot to be heard by over 1 million people worldwide, what I preached was God's inclusive love for all people. I added my voice, our voice, to others who say no one is excluded from the story of all-encompassing love. I lifted up an explicitly multi-faith, multicultural, LGBTQ plus affirming love. If it has reached 1 million or more, or even less people, the vast majority of those who listen are probably fairly fundamentalist in their Christian theology. And no small number of them are Christian leaders. And I did my best to speak persuasively using Carlton's story to lift up the existential pain caused when someone with religious authority tells a person that they're bad or not okay or not safe, that they're a heretic or an abomination because of who they are, or because of who they love, or because of what they believe. It's a spiritual wounding. And Carlton Pearson understood it because he experienced it. His advocating for inclusion led to his rejection. And he saw how mean and angry church folks can be. But he never blamed them. He always blamed their theology, and he tried to change it and explain it. And he tried to move their theology from one of fear to one of love. We've been on quite a journey as a congregation over the last 15 years since Carlton and Gina and his family joined All Souls and encouraged the rest of the members of his congregation who were with him to join as well at that time. He and I hoped that together with your help and David and Rick and all of us, that we could create a religious expression of love like the world has never seen or experienced before. We aim to embody in this community and beyond it a vision of the kingdom of heaven here on earth, to manifest here, now, the world we believe is possible out there, where everybody can experience a sense of belonging and of being loved and worthy. And we may have a long way to go to reach everybody, but that love is here for us right now. And that hope of building such a far-reaching community of love beyond belief is alive in us still. Last Sunday, we had one of my favorite violinists in the service, Sherry Neubauer from the symphony. I don't know if you remember. I'm sure if you were here, you do. And I said at the point service, because it happened to me in this service, that her music brings me to a profound feeling of spiritual bliss. I practically have an out-of-body experience when she's playing the violin. I started having it over here with you guys playing that song, because Tommy's saxophone is a lot like that. But once I turned people on to that possibility, other people came up to me in the service, after the service, including Reverend Randy over here, and said that they experienced it too. Now, Sherry has been here before, but not everyone has experienced what I described when she played. But once they were paying attention, they experienced it. So often I think that we are all sort of semi-sleepwalking through our lives. We are where we are, and yet we're also somewhere else in our minds. So I want to be clear. The hope is here, now. The love is here, now. The Spirit is here, right now. But often we're too distracted to notice it. So as we launch into this theme of hope in December, I want us to be aware to not be sleepwalking through our lives. Stop and pay attention to what you're feeling. Listening to the news, you and I can quickly find ourselves filled with anger. The practice of love beyond belief teaches us to stop and wait and listen. Stop and wait and listen. Because below and beyond the anger, what I find beyond the anger when I do this is fear. Fear that our world is increasingly filled with chaos. Fear that we may be on a downward spiral that we will not be able to turn around. Then when I listen even deeper, beyond the fear, I begin to notice under the fear is sadness. Sadness for the incredible losses that are occurring in the chaos. And when I'm really listening, tears come. And in the tears, I feel my heart opening to caring. And then I act out of that caring rather than the anger or the fear. It's our tradition here to love beyond belief. Our doctrine, so to speak, is our direct experience. Our practice is to pause and wait and to pay attention until we know what we're really feeling. And then to use our higher mind and our values to help us decide how to act. The tradition here is love beyond belief. The doctrine, so to speak, is our direct experience. Our practice is to pause and wait and listen until we know what we're really feeling. And then to use our higher minds and our values to help us decide how to act. The rose is open. Blessed be. I love you.
If we are